somewhere over a mountain range with no name on any unclassified map, a man is falling through clouds at 140 miles per hour. He is not afraid. Fear left him somewhere around jump number 200. What he is calculating. Oxygen mask, check. Altimeter reading 14,000 feet, check. The beacon signal from below is intermittent, which means the pilot is either moving or losing consciousness. Either way, the clock is already running. He adjusts his body angle by 3 degrees, nudging his trajectory toward the signal. A correction so small it looks like nothing. At this speed, it puts him exactly where he needs to be. Below him, through a gap in the clouds, he can see the valley. He can see the smoke. He can see the small orange flickers that are not campfires. He does not look away. Most people fall from 14,000 feet and experience one of two things, pure terror or pure exhilaration. He experiences neither. He experiences focus, the kind of focus that comes from 2 years of someone methodically dismantling every instinct you were born with and replacing it with something quieter, something that doesn't panic, something that calculates. He knows 3 things about the man on the ground. The distress beacon activated 23 minutes ago. An F-16 pilot, callsign Viper 4, ejected over hostile territory at low altitude. At low altitude, ejection seats don't give you time to assume the correct position, which means Viper 4 almost certainly landed wrong, which means trauma, which means the clock isn't just running, it's been running for 23 minutes already. He pulls his ripcord at 3,500 feet. The canopy opens with a crack loud enough to be heard from the ground. He doesn't care. Anyone on the ground who hasn't already seen the smoke trail from a dying F-16 isn't paying attention. He steers toward the ravine. He is not a soldier sent to end something. He is not a weapon pointed at a target. He is something the military spent decades trying to build and barely managed to produce. In numbers you could count on 2 hands per base. He is the last phone call a dying man gets to make. You have no idea he exists. Neither does almost anyone else. That's the point. His boots touch earth and the countdown starts. Not a metaphor, an actual countdown, running in the back of his mind the way a second hand runs on a watch. Invisible until you need it. Impossible to stop once you notice it. 4 minutes of viable brain function after cardiac arrest. He has trained himself to think in countdowns the way other people think in sentences. He covers the first 100 meters before the canopy finishes settling. The ravine is steeper than the satellite imagery suggested. Loose shale, scrub brush that grabs at his kit, a slope angle that would slow a sprinting man by 30%. He is not sprinting. He is moving at exactly the pace that keeps him functional at the bottom, fast enough to matter, controlled enough to arrive intact. He finds Viper 4 behind a boulder the size of a car. The pilot is conscious. That's the first surprise. The second surprise is what he says. Took you long enough. Gallows humor. Good means the brain is still online. He doesn't smile back. He's already running his hands over the flight suit, reading the body the way a mechanic reads an engine. Looking for what's wrong before the patient can tell him. Because patients lie, especially the ones trying to seem okay. Right leg, compound fracture, tibia visible through the fabric. Left leg, worse angle, but the color is wrong for arterial. He files both under deal with it in order. The chest is what worries him. Breath sounds unequal. Right side diminished. He presses 2 fingers below the collarbone and the pilot hisses through his teeth. Possible tension pneumothorax, air building in the chest cavity, slowly collapsing the lung, slowly pushing the heart out of position. Slowly killing a man who is currently making jokes. He pulls the needle. 14 gauge, 3.5 inches. He finds the second intercostal space, a mid-clavicular line, a location he has practiced on mannequins, on cadavers, on animals, in the dark, underwater, with instructors screaming in his ear, and he inserts it without hesitation. The hiss of escaping air is the best sound he has heard all day. That felt weird, the pilot says. It's supposed to. IV access next. The veins are collapsed from blood loss and exertion, which means the easy routes are gone. He goes for the external jugular. A needle in the neck, a technique that looks brutal and works perfectly, and gets it on the first attempt. Fluids wide open. Morphine, calculated dose, enough to make the next part survivable, but not enough to put the man to sleep, because he needs the pilot conscious for what comes next. What comes next is moving him. "This is going to hurt," he says. The pilot looks at him with the eyes of a man who has already renegotiated his relationship with pain. "Then let's get it over with." They move. 400 pounds of pilot, gear, and medical kit uphill on loose shale under fire. His legs are having a conversation with him that he is choosing not to engage in. His lungs are making requests he is deferring until later. The rock face above them produces a sound like a typewriter, rounds impacting stone, rhythmic, almost mechanical, getting closer. He does not stop. The helicopter is visible at the ridgeline. 60 meters, 40, 20. The crew chief sees them coming and is already moving, already reaching, already doing the math on how to get a broken man into a bird without finishing the job the enemy started. They load him in 30 seconds. The pilot screams once when his legs clear the deck. Then he is quiet. Then they are lifting. Then the valley drops away beneath them, and the sound of gunfire becomes something you can observe rather than something you inhabit. He sits against the bulkhead and checks his hands. Steady. They are always steady during. It's after that they sometimes shake. He starts writing the report in his head. Date, time, patient presentation, interventions. He will have it memorized by the time they land. 22 hours from now, Viper 4 will call his wife from a hospital bed in Germany. He will not be there for that call. He will be asleep on a cot somewhere or already briefing for the next one. He will never know the pilot's name. That's not why he does it. Every branch of the American military has a weapon. Delta Force is a scalpel, precise, quiet, inserted into a problem with surgical intent and withdrawn before anyone official has to acknowledge it happened. The Navy SEALs are a hammer, overwhelming, direct, built for the kind of violence that ends arguments. The Marine Raiders are a battering ram, force applied at the point of maximum resistance until something gives way. Pararescue is something else entirely. The military has never come up with a clean metaphor for what PJs are, because the honest metaphor runs opposite to everything that war, by definition, is supposed to accomplish. War is the organized application of force toward destruction. PJs are the organized application of everything. Medicine, combat, diving, parachuting, mountaineering, survival, toward a single outcome that has nothing to do with destruction. They exist to bring people home, not to neutralize, not to suppress, not to eliminate. To find the person who is bleeding out in a place no one else can reach, and physically carry them back to a world where someone can fix them. In a military ecosystem built around projecting lethal force, pararescue is the unit whose entire budget, whose entire training pipeline, whose entire reason for existing is the refusal to let someone die alone in a field. The motto is that others may live. Other units have mottos that sound like that, phrases about valor, about sacrifice, about never leaving a man behind. Pararescue has one that is simply a job description. 4 words that describe with complete precision the transaction being offered. You are going to be in a situation where survival is not possible. We are going to make it possible. That is the only thing we do. Here is what most people don't know. Pararescue was not designed in a Pentagon conference room. It was born in 1947 from a single event, a cargo plane crash in the Philippine jungle that left the survivors alive and unreachable for days, while the military stood at the edge of the jungle and realized it had no one trained to go in after them. People died waiting for a unit that didn't exist yet. PJs are what happened when someone decided that would never happen again. They are not the sword. They are not the shield. They are the reason the sword and the shield can operate with the knowledge that if the worst happens, if the door kicks back, if the rotor catches a wire, if the convoy hits something buried in the road, someone is already in the air, already calculating, already coming. You just can't see them yet. Everyone asks the wrong question. The wrong question is, what kind of person becomes a pararescue jumper? It sounds right. It feels like the natural place to start. But it assumes that there is a type, a physical template, a personality profile, a checklist of attributes that produces a PJ the way a recipe produces a specific dish. PJ instructors have been watching candidates for decades. They have seen Division I athletes quit on day 3. They have seen men who looked, on paper, like they were engineered for this. 6'2", 200 pounds of functional muscle, prior combat experience, exceptional swim times. Sit down on a beach in the middle of week 2 and simply stop. They have also seen a 23-year-old former lifeguard from Pensacola, Florida, who had never fired a weapon in his life, make it through the entire pipeline on his first attempt. So the instructors stopped asking what kind of person. They started watching for something else. What they watch for is a reflex, not a physical reflex, a moral one. The moment when something goes wrong in the water, a training partner takes in a mouthful. A candidate next to you starts to panic, and the question becomes, not, can you keep going, but what do you do about the person beside you? The ones who make it are the ones who move toward the problem before they have consciously decided to. The reflex fires before the thought arrives. 40% of PJs come from medical backgrounds. Paramedics, EMTs, combat medics from other branches who looked at what they were doing and felt like it wasn't enough. Another significant portion come from water. Lifeguards, competitive swimmers, dive instructors who got bored with controlled environments and wanted to know what the job looked like when the conditions were trying to kill you. What they share is not a body type or a test score. What they share is an inability to stand still when someone needs help. You have probably felt it, that pull. The moment someone goes down in a crowd and your body shifts toward them before your brain has processed what's happening. Most people feel it and then stop. They look for someone more qualified, they take out their phone, they wait. PJs are the ones who never learn to wait. The recruiter will tell you the truth the first time you call. 2 years. 80% washout rate. The hardest pipeline in the United States military. Longer than SEALs, longer than Delta, longer than anything with a name people recognize. Most people who attempt it do not finish it. You sign up anyway, because the alternative, knowing this exists and choosing not to try, feels worse than failing. The pipeline doesn't train you, it excavates you. Every phase strips away another layer of who you thought you were, your assumptions about your body, your ceiling, your relationship with discomfort, until what remains is either a PJ or someone who has discovered, with complete honesty, exactly where their limit is. Both outcomes are real. Both outcomes are permanent. Only one gets the beret. It starts at Lackland Air Force Base. 9 weeks. They call it indoctrination. What it actually is a filter, not for the weakest candidates, but for the ones who will eventually decide that the cost is too high. The instructors are not trying to train you yet. They are trying to find out what you do when every reasonable part of your brain is presenting a coherent argument for stopping. Week 1, the shock. 5 in the morning until midnight. Every minute between those 2 points accounted for. Filled with something that costs you something. Running in boots on sand and heat that makes the horizon blur. Ocean swims timed, in water that is not interested in whether you're having a good day. Calisthenics past the point of muscle failure, then more calisthenics because failure in this context is not a stopping point. It is a data point. The boats are real, inflatable rescue craft, hundreds of pounds, carried above your head down a beach while instructors observe with the detached interest of people who have seen this particular expression of human suffering enough times to find it informative rather than remarkable. There is a bell. It hangs near the pool. Ringing it means you are done. No argument, no second chance, no explanation required. Every day, someone walks to the bell. Some of them are the people you would have bet on. A man with a Division I swimming scholarship rang it on day 9. He sat down on the pool deck, looked at the water for a long moment, and walked to the bell without saying anything to anyone. Nobody stopped him. Nobody needed to. The pool is where the excavation goes deepest. They call it water confidence training. The name is a remarkable piece of understatement. What it is, instructors approaching candidates from behind in the deep end, removing their masks, binding their hands, inverting them, and presenting them with a series of problems to solve while their lungs compress toward the point of blackout. The solution to each problem is specific, technical, and must be executed in the correct sequence while every animal instinct in the human body is screaming a single word. Surface. The ones who surface without solving the problem are done. The ones who panic are done. Some candidates lose consciousness. The safety divers pull them up. They wake up coughing on the tile, and most of them, still coughing, still disoriented, walk directly to the bell. You start indoc with 100 candidates. You finish with 15, sometimes 10. Then combat dive school, 10 weeks in Panama City. You arrive knowing how to swim. You leave knowing how to disappear underwater. Closed circuit rebreathers that produce no bubbles, no surface signature. No evidence of your presence except the objective you just completed. Underwater navigation in zero visibility using nothing but a compass and a kick count. Arriving within feet of a target a mile away. Then Army Airborne. 3 weeks. A static line jumps from 1,200 feet. After what came before, it registers as something close to a vacation. Regular Army soldiers around you struggling with things you mastered in passing. You help them, quietly, because helping has started to become reflexive. Then military freefall. 5 weeks. Halo, high altitude, low opening. Exit at 25,000 feet. Oxygen mask required because the air at that altitude is not sufficient to sustain consciousness. Free fall for 2 minutes through cold that freezes the moisture on your face. Open at 3,000 feet. Land ready to fight. Choi, H-O, same exit altitude, open immediately. Glide for 15 miles in the dark, navigate to a target, land soft. Then S-E-R-E, survival. Evasion, resistance, escape. 3 weeks. They drop you in the wilderness with a knife and the clothes you are wearing. Then they hunt you. When they catch you, and they always catch you, that is the design. The resistance phase begins. Simulated interrogation. stress positions, sleep deprivation calibrated to produce hallucinations. The goal is not to break you. The goal is to teach you what breaking feels like from the inside, so that when it starts happening in the field, you recognize it and have something to hold on to. Then paramedic training. 6 months. The certification is the same one civilian paramedics carry. The content is not. Surgical airways, chest tubes, field blood transfusions, procedures that most emergency room physicians perform fewer than a dozen times in a career, practiced until they are available in the dark, under fire, with one hand, in the rain. Then, the PJ Apprentice course, 6 months. Everything converges. Medicine, weapons, tactics, mountain rescue, swift water, urban collapse, high-angle extraction. The final evaluation is a week-long exercise in which everything that can go wrong does in the wrong order, simultaneously. The graduation ceremony is quiet, a small room. Your class, which is a fraction of the people who started. The instructors. A few senior PJs who came to look at who made it through this time. Someone pins a maroon beret to your head and says 4 words that are not congratulations. Now you prove it. You ship out the following week. Somewhere, right now, there is a pilot in a ready room, drinking coffee, complaining about the weather. You have never met him. You are already responsible for him. The first time it's real is different from every simulation. The radio call sounds the same. The briefing sounds the same. The helicopter sounds the same. The same vibration through the airframe, the same smell of hydraulic fluid and jet exhaust, the same way the crew chief holds up fingers to count down the minutes to the insertion point. Everything sounds the same and looks the same, and your body is running the same pre-mission checklist it has run 400 times in training. But when the ramp drops and the cold air hits you, something in your chest knows. This time, there is no instructor standing by to stop it. The target is a vehicle that hit something buried in a road 3 hours ago. 2 survivors, 1 stable, 1 not. The landing zone is a field 400 meters from the wreck, which means 400 meters of open ground in the dark with kit that weighs more than some people. You have rehearsed this exact scenario. You have rehearsed it in daylight, in rain, in a simulation designed to introduce random failures at the worst possible moments. None of that information is available to the part of your brain that is currently registering that the people in that field are not training cadre, waiting to evaluate your performance. They are just people, waiting. Your hands move before your brain catches up. 2 years of repetition overriding 2 seconds of something that would, in any other context, be called fear. You are across the field before you have consciously decided to move. The first patient is sitting upright, which is good. The second is not, which is not. You work. The clinical part of your brain takes over the way it was trained to, assessing, prioritizing, making decisions in a sequence that has been practiced until it runs below the level of conscious thought. Primary survey. Airway clear. Breathing compromised. Circulation. You find the bleed and you address it with the focused attention of someone who has been told repeatedly that hesitation in this moment is a choice with consequences measured in minutes. 17 minutes after your boots touch the field, both patients are loaded. You lift off. You sit against the bulkhead and run the debrief in your head. What you did, what you should have done faster, what you will do differently next time. And somewhere in that process you realize that your hands are shaking. Not during, after, always after. Both patients survive. You will not learn this for 6 hours when someone passes the information along in the casualness of a unit where good outcomes are reported the same way weather is reported, noted, filed, moved past. You do not celebrate. You begin preparing for the next one. But something has changed. The beret on your head, which felt ceremonial 4 weeks ago, feels different now. It has been field tested. It has been taken somewhere real and asked to perform, and it performed. You are not the same person who stood in that small room and heard, "Now you prove it." You are, for the first time, beginning to understand what proving it actually costs. Special operations units do not hand out trust. It is not issued at a ceremony. It is not written into an order or conveyed by rank or established by reputation alone. It accumulates the way scar tissue accumulates, slowly, invisibly, through repeated exposure to conditions that would destroy something less durable. You earn it in increments so small they are invisible at the time and only become measurable in retrospect. The unit's PJs work alongside Delta, the Night Stalkers, SEAL Team 6, the ones whose names appear in congressional budgets as line items with no description. These are not organizations that extend professional courtesy to people they haven't watched perform under pressure. They have been burned by untested assets. They have planned operations around capabilities that turned out to be theoretical. They are, as a community, allergic to the gap between what someone claims to be able to do and what they actually do when the situation removes the option of trying again. They trust PJs, not because PJs asked to be trusted, not because of a briefing or a certification or a letter of commendation, because they have watched PJs work in the specific conditions that strip every variable away and leave only the question of whether the person next to you is actually what they say they are, under fire, in the dark, with someone bleeding out and the clock audible to everyone in the room. PJs have consistently been exactly what they say they are. There is a particular expression on a wounded operator's face when he hears the word PJ come across the radio. It is not quite relief. Relief implies that the outcome was in doubt. This is something older than relief, the specific loosening of a specific kind of tension that only exists in people who have spent years operating in environments where help, when it comes, is not guaranteed to be sufficient. PJs are sufficient. The operators know it. The expression on the wounded man's face knows it. He will not remember the PJ's name. The PJ does not need him to. What the PJ carries instead is something harder to quantify and more durable than recognition. The knowledge, accumulated mission by mission, that when the people who are hardest to impress needed someone, he was enough. That is the only score that matters, and it is kept nowhere except in the space between the people who were there. There is a folder on his computer he has never shown anyone. Not his wife, not his therapist, not the men he has served with for a decade. It contains a single document, 17 names, each one a mission that ended the only way a PJ mission is never supposed to end, with the person he went in after already gone, or going faster than anything he carried could address. The experienced PJs warned him this was coming. He thought he understood. He didn't. Not yet. The report reads date, classified, location, classified, patient, male, mid-30s, ejection trauma, tension pneumothorax internal hemorrhage, interventions attempted, needle decompression, IV access, fluid resuscitation, CPR, time of death, 0347 local, clinical, professional. The language of a system that needs the facts without the weight of the facts. What the report does not contain. The way the pilot talked about his daughter, her name was Claire. She was 4 years old and had recently become, in her father's words, completely obsessed with horses. Not toy horses, not cartoon horses, but real horses, to the point where every sentence she spoke found a way to circle back to horses. And her father had been saving money for riding lessons because he thought it would pass but was starting to suspect it wouldn't. He talked about Claire for 11 minutes while his blood pressure dropped in increments too small to stop with what was available in a field kit in the dark, in a location that does not appear on unclassified maps. He knew. The ones who have been close to it before always know. He kept talking anyway, the way people do when talking is the last thing they can control. Tell her I kept my promise. I told her I'd come back, and I know just tell her I tried. The helicopter arrived 4 minutes after. 4 minutes is not a long time. In most contexts, 4 minutes is nothing. The length of a song, the time it takes to make coffee, an unremarkable interval between one moment and the next. In this context, 4 minutes was the precise distance between a daughter who still had a father and a daughter who didn't. He wrote the report, he filed it, he went to the corner of the base that had become, without anyone designating it as such, the place where PJs went when they needed to be somewhere that wasn't in front of anyone else. He sat there for a while. The community has a ritual that no one formally established and no one formally teaches. When a PJ loses a patient, really loses one, the kind that stays, the unit goes quiet for 24 hours. Not silent, quiet. Conversations continue, missions are briefed, equipment is checked, but the specific frequency on which PJs communicate the things that don't fit into reports goes silent, out of something that is not grief exactly and not respect exactly, but lives in the territory between them. Then they go back out. Not because the weight lifts, it doesn't. Not because the name disappears from the document, it doesn't. The document now has 18 names and will have more, and he has accepted this the way you accept the existence of gravity. Not with happiness, not with resignation, but with the recognition that the alternative to carrying the weight is not going back out. And not going back out means the next name on the list belongs to someone who didn't have to be there. He closes the laptop. He checks his kit. He goes back out. The body keeps a ledger. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't negotiate. Every parachute landing, and there are hundreds of them, each one a controlled collision between a human skeleton and the surface of the earth, gets recorded. Every casualty carry, every sprint across open ground with 100 pounds of kit, every hour spent in water cold enough to produce the specific kind of muscle fatigue that doesn't resolve with sleep, all of it written down in a language the body speaks fluently, and the mind learns to read only when the entries start compounding. By 35, most PJs are moving on joints that belong to someone 20 years older. By 40, the ones still operational are the exceptions, and they know it, and they do not discuss it, because discussing it would require acknowledging that the machine is running on borrowed time, and borrowed time is still time, and there is still work. The ledger the body keeps is the visible one. The ones harder to audit are the others. The marriage ledger. Deployments that last months. Training rotations that take weeks. The specific arithmetic of a relationship where one person is present and one person is somewhere that cannot be named on a phone call home. His wife knew what she was agreeing to. At least she believed she did. The reality of it, the actual texture of raising children in a house where the other parent's absence is the default condition, where the question, "When is Dad coming home?" has an answer that is either classified or genuinely unknown, is something that cannot be fully communicated in advance. Some PJ marriages survive it. Many do not. The ones that survive do so because two people decided repeatedly, in the specific moments when deciding was hardest, to keep deciding. The children grow up knowing their father helps people. They don't know the names. They don't know the locations. They know that Dad's job is important, and that important jobs sometimes mean empty chairs at birthday dinners and school plays, and the kind of ordinary Tuesday evenings that turn out, in retrospect, to have been the moments that mattered most. He misses them. This is not a clean or resolvable feeling. It sits alongside everything else he carries. The 17 names the trust of the men he works beside, the weight of the beret, and it does not diminish any of those things, and they do not diminish it. There is something his wife said once, in a conversation neither of them planned to have, that stayed with him. "I knew you were going to be someone who runs toward things. I just didn't know I'd spend so much of our life watching you run. The ones who last longest in this job are not the ones who feel nothing. The therapists who work with SOF communities will tell you this directly. The operators who present as emotionally flat, who have successfully insulated themselves from the weight of what they do, are not the durable ones. They are the ones who eventually stop, suddenly, in a way that is hard to come back from. The ones who last are the ones who feel everything and choose to go back anyway. That distinction between numbness and endurance is the thing the pipeline selects for and cannot directly test for, because it only reveals itself over years in the accumulation of weight that either breaks a person or becomes somehow part of the structure that holds them up. He is not unbroken. Nobody who does this long enough is unbroken. He is, however, still standing, still checking his kit, still going back out, still the last phone call a dying man gets to make. His wife understands this now, in a way she couldn't at the beginning. His children will understand it later, when they are old enough to ask the questions they currently don't have the words for. The ledger keeps running, he keeps going. That is, in the end, what endurance looks like from the inside. He is in his 40s now. The ramp doesn't drop for him anymore. His knees made that decision 18 months ago, confirmed by a surgeon who used the word remarkable in a way that was not complimentary. Remarkable that a man his age had accumulated this particular configuration of damage. Remarkable that he had continued operating on it as long as he had. Remarkable, frankly, that he was walking into the office under his own power. He teaches now, in Doc Cadre. He stands at the edge of the pool and watches candidates solve problems underwater with their hands bound and their masks stripped away, and he remembers being that person. Remembers the specific quality of that particular panic, the way the water presses in from every direction when the instinct to surface is fighting the training that says, solve it first, and he watches to see which ones have the reflex. He can usually tell by the end of the first week. 3 times last week, his phone rang after midnight. The first call was from a candidate who had just finished indoc. He was calling from a parking lot outside the base, sitting in his car. Not entirely sure why he was calling, except that he needed to say it out loud to someone who would understand what it meant. I made it through. They talked for 40 minutes. The second call was from a former student on his 3rd deployment, calling between missions, needing to talk through a decision he'd made in the field that he wasn't sure was the right one. It was the right one. It took an hour to explain why. The third call was from a PJ, 2 years into his operational career, who had just lost his first patient. He wasn't crying. He was past crying, into the quieter territory on the other side of it, looking for language that fit what he was carrying. They talked until the language started to arrive. 7 years ago, a pilot with the call sign Viper 4 landed wrong after a low-altitude ejection over hostile territory. He was found in a ravine by a man falling through clouds and carried to a helicopter under fire and flown to a surgical team in Germany and rebuilt over 4 months of recovery and eventually returned to flight status. Last spring, his son graduated from the United States Air Force Academy. The PJ who pulled him out of that ravine was not at the graduation. He didn't know it happened. He will never know it happened. Viper 4 knows. When his son walked across that stage, he thought about a man whose name he never learned. A man who came down through the clouds on the worst day of his life and made a different ending possible. He has thought about that man on every significant day since. His son's first steps, his daughter's recital, every ordinary Tuesday that turned out to matter. The ripple moves outward in directions no one can track. 500 active duty PJs, a courier average of 12 lives directly saved per operator. 6,000 people, each of them with a family. Each family with a future that exists because someone calculated a trajectory adjustment at 14,000 feet and got it right. The math becomes impossible to hold, so you don't try to hold it. You just answer the phone at midnight. You stand at the edge of the pool and watch the next ones find out who they are. You keep the promise that has no expiration date, the one made not in a ceremony or a document but in the specific moment when someone needed help and you moved before you thought about it. That others may live, not a slogan, not a motto embroidered on a unit flag. A description of every choice, compounding across a career, accumulating into something that cannot be fully measured and does not need to be, because somewhere right now a pilot is flying a mission. A soldier is raising his kids. A man who was bleeding out in a field is sitting at a graduation, watching his son walk across a stage, carrying a debt he can never repay to a person he will never find. They are alive. That is the whole answer. That has always been the whole answer. Oh.